I thank all of the assembled devotees for so kindly coming together today. The Prabhupada's appearance in this world, our offering to please him is to assist him in his mission. And what does it really mean to assist Srila Prabhupada in his mission? It is not simply executing a particular service, but it's encapsulating the very spirit and form of all of his instructions and applying it to our life. Unless we are empowered by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, we cannot really, with substance and sustainability, be instruments of that mercy. And that means we need to sincerely please him. Yasya prasada bhagavat prasado yasya prasada nagati kotopi. When the Guru is pleased, Krishna is pleased. And what pleases Srila Prabhupada? When he was asked at one occasion, what pleases you the most? Srila Prabhupada's reply was, when you love Krishna. Krishna tells Mad Bhakta Pujapyadika that worship of my devotee is more pleasing to me than direct worship to me. This is an eternal truth. Srila Prabhupada gave the analogy that if a very wealthy, powerful man is approached, it's not that easy to please him. But if you just offer something to the beloved little child of that man and the boy is pleased, then you win the heart of the great man. And Srila Prabhupada was using that analogy to illustrate this idea of Mad Bhakta Pujapyadika. Krishna doesn't need anything from us. Patram pushpam palam toyam. But he's willing to accept even a leaf, a fruit, a flower, or water if it's offered with devotion. But most pleasing to Krishna is when we please those persons who have given their lives in his loving service. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, has given his life. The prayers, the sacrifices, the efforts of compassion that he's extended to give Krishna consciousness to us. Krishna Pristaya Bhutale. He is so very dear to Krishna. And by pleasing Srila Prabhupada, we can so much have access to the mercy of Krishna. Krishna is born on Janmashtami. And according to the history of the Srimad Bhagavatam and the other Acharyas, he appeared at midnight. And in Mathura, in the prison cell, there wasn't much of a celebration at that time. Devaki and Vasudev offered obeisances to the Lord who appeared in his form of Narayan. And after that, the celebration was bringing Krishna to Gokul. The newborn baby is just born after so many years of striving to have a child. And practically instantly, as soon as he takes his little baby form, he asks to go away. And they didn't know if they would ever see him again. Meanwhile, in Gokul, Krishna simultaneously took birth. But his appearance in Gokul at midnight, Yashoda Mai and everybody else was sleeping. Nobody even knew he was born. It wasn't until later that Yashoda Mai rose from her sleep and she saw the little baby Gopal laying at her side. And that was Nandotsav, the wonderful festival celebrating Krishna's birth. For the Brijbasis, and according to Srimad Bhagavatam, the true celebration for all the devotees at that time was Nandotsava. How beautiful it is that Krishna's orchestrated Madbhakta Pujapyadika, that we can celebrate Nandotsav by worshiping Srila Prabhupada, because it pleases him even more than when we worship him. Such a wonderful opportunity for us to get Radharani and Gopinath's mercy by worshiping Srila Prabhupada on this Vyasa Puja day. And just a few minutes ago, I was speaking to the devotees in Calcutta. You'll be so happy to hear that after so many years of praying and dreaming and longing, our fulfillment has come. It seemed impossible, and devotees in Calcutta struggled for over 10 years. And Shankar Shan Prabhu and others struggled for over 50 years. But Srila Prabhupada's actual birthplace, under the jackfruit tree, is now the property of ISKCON. And they've already developed it into a very clean, large area to worship Srila Prabhupada. And the inauguration of this wonderful project is taking place at this very moment. In Calcutta, at Ultadunga Junction Road, in 1922 on the rooftop, also under a jackfruit tree, Srila Prabhupada met Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, where his spiritual birth was under a jackfruit tree, just as he was born under a jackfruit tree. There at Ultadunga Junction Road, Srila Prabhupada was given this life mission to take the message of Lord Chaitanya to the whole world in the English language. And Srila Prabhupada, from the very beginning, it was his dream that he would have his international headquarters in Mayapur, the place where Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, and the place where the Sankirtan movement took birth. Over the years, it's so special because Srila Prabhupada sent Tamal Krishna Goswami to try to get this little paddy field to begin the project in Mayapur. And Srila Prabhupada was in his bhajan kutir in Calcutta on Albert Road. And he stayed up late that night just waiting and waiting. And that historical moment came, such a connection between Calcutta and Mayapur. The deed was given to Srila Prabhupada in Calcutta. And from that time, Srila Prabhupada had devotees from all over the world serving to develop Mayapur. And Srila Prabhupada, even when it was just a very, very, a very small, undeveloped building, Srila Prabhupada invited devotees from all over the world to celebrate Gaur Purnima in Mayapur. And Srila Prabhupada arranged during that Gaur Purnima festival just prior that the international GBC meet every year in Mayapur. And he instructed our whole movement, specifically Ambarish Prabhu, to build the temple of the Vedic planetarium to attract the whole world to Mayapur. Srila Prabhupada, he stated that Calcutta is the gateway to Mayapur. And of course, for so many years, really our movement hasn't done very much of anything in Mayapur. I mean, in Calcutta, Bombay has developed and Delhi has developed, and so many places in Gujarat and South India have developed, and Mayapur, Vrindavan. But up until just 10 years ago, all we had is Calcutta was the same little place that Prabhupada started ISKCON on Albert Road, just one floor of a building. But the devotees gradually, and very much with the help and the support of the devotees of Radha Gopinath Temple, devotees got the whole building at Albert Road, Srila Prabhupada's bhajan kutir, and developed it, renovated it beautifully. And devotees obtained Ultadanga Junction Road, the place where Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur started his preaching mission and where Prabhupada got his instruction. And the devotees are getting land outside of Calcutta to develop a wonderful project, a huge, beautiful temple and educational cultural center for Prabhupada. And today inaugurated a most endearing project at the very site of Srila Prabhupada's birthplace. In Mumbai, you all have been to the Gateway of India. At the time of the British, India was the crown jewel of the British Empire at that time. It was the prize of all their places all over the world. But the Gateway of India is a historical monument. Even today, it's perhaps the most popular tourist place for people all over the world when they come to Mumbai is the Gateway of India. Prabhupada, in a similar spirit, he wanted Calcutta to be the gateway to Mayapur. Mayapur represents Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life and teachings. Mayapur represents the heart of the entire universe spiritually. And it's so beautiful because you approach Mayapur through the gateway, and the gateway is Srila Prabhupada's birthplace, where Srila Prabhupada had his wonderful childhood pastimes. So often, Srila Prabhupada, with such pleasure, he would remember his youth in Calcutta. How when he was a little boy, he would rise and see his mother and father worshiping the deities of Radha Govinda. In Srila Prabhupada's Krishna book, he dedicates it to his father, Gaur Mohan Dey, and describes there that my father gave me my first Radha Krishna Vigraha. And he also gave me Jagannath and arranged for me to perform a Rath Yatra. And that same spirit of devotion that I imbibed from my father, I received from my spiritual master. So Srila Prabhupada, when he's opening the Krishna book, the dedication where he's going to glorify Krishna, he begins by remembering his childhood in Calcutta. Yes, Calcutta is Prabhupada's such a special place. It's also, like Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's arrangement, it was from the King George dockyards in Calcutta that Srila Prabhupada boarded the Jaladuta and went to the west to begin his movement. The gateway to Mayapur, the gateway to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda Prabhu's mercy, is Srila Prabhupada. Through pleasing him, worshiping him means pleasing him. Worship does not just mean a ritual or a formality. It means to please through service. By making Srila Prabhupada's teachings and the spirit of his teachings the priority of our life, that is how we really please Srila Prabhupada. And that is how we truly assist him in his mission. And because he is the gateway to Mahaprabhu's heart, that is the only way that we will actually enter into the real loving service of the Panchatattva and Sri Sri Radha Madhava. Srila Prabhupada taught us kirtan, the congregational chanting of the holy names. At the time of initiation, he asked us to take a vow to attentively as possible chant at least 16 rounds every day. He gave us these 4 regulative principles to follow. He gave us his books. As was said, he endeavored with such compassion to us and to the world for all future generations in order to provide these books for us. He was writing as his greatest offering to Sri Guru and Gauranga. And he wanted us to read these books, to discuss these books among each other, to have classes on these books, and to apply the teachings to our lives. He established temples and installed deities. And these temples and these deities really are every devotee's responsibility to Srila Prabhupada, because all the deities, either Prabhupada installed them directly, or we have installed them, devotees have installed them on Prabhupada's behalf. His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj writes how much responsibility Srila Prabhupada personally took to Sri Sri Radha Ras Bihari in such a personal way. As the Acharya, he wasn't only doing it in his love for Sri Sri Radha Ras Bihari, but included within his love for Sri Sri Radha Ras Bihari was the essential example he was giving for every single one of his followers for all generations to come. This is the responsibility that we need to take. Srila Prabhupada took such responsibility. When his Guru Maharaj asked him to take the message of Lord Chaitanya to the Western world, at that time, India was still under British rule. Srila Prabhupada was married and just had a child. And he was just struggling to make a living. It seemed impossible. But Srila Prabhupada took that responsibility. My Guru Maharaj has given me a mission. And when Srila Prabhupada promised Radha Ras Bihari, I'll build you a temple here. Every opposition, it was impossible. All the devotees considered it impossible. But Srila Prabhupada took such responsibility to see it through because he gave his word. As our founder Acharya, this is the legacy he has given us. To really follow his teachings, to truly please him, is to inherit the legacy he's given us. To make the order of the spiritual master one's life and soul. And Gauranga Prabhu just very wonderfully explained Srila Prabhupada's directions for leadership. Leadership means to be the servant of the servant of the servant. Srila Prabhupada said, a good leader is a good follower. And a good follower is actually a good leader. Srila Prabhupada said that he had shed buckets of blood to bring each and every devotee that has come to this movement. Kishori Devi was in her offering describing, how Srila Prabhupada took such responsibility for each and every one of the devotees that came to this movement, to be there for them, directly or indirectly, directly through his own personal guidance, kindness, sometimes loving chastisement, and indirectly through his entrusted representatives. He expected his leaders to take responsibility for the lives of each devotee on his behalf, as far as possible, in the same way he personally would do it. And in the early days, the devotees who were leaders of our movement were people who had personal experience of Prabhupada's loving care in their own lives. And Srila Prabhupada essentially told them, what I have given you, now give to others. That means the pure, uncompromised teachings and also the spirit of the teachings. The idea of an Acharya is Guru Sadhu Shastra. You know, we have the scriptures. That's the basis. Books are the basis. But to give us an entrance into the spirit of how to understand and apply the teachings of the scriptures, we need an Acharya. Mahajano Yena Gatasa Panta. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught, there is no other way to truly understand what Krishna is speaking in the scriptures except to follow in the footsteps of the great souls. Srila Prabhupada, out of his causeless mercy for all of us, established himself as the founder Acharya. Actually, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur and all of our Bhakti Vinod Thakur, our whole Parampara and Sri Panchatattva and Radha Madhav actually established Srila Prabhupada as the founder Acharya of ISKCON. That means his love, his care, his taking of responsibility for the mission of his Guru. He is setting the example. We cannot imitate, but it's actually the prominent responsibility of every single devotee throughout the world, whatever our role and position, whether we're brahmacharis, sannyasis, or grihastas living with our families, our primary responsibility is to follow in the footsteps of our founder Acharya. That's what it means. And that means very much to take responsibility for the vows we've taken before him. And take responsibility as he did for the unity and the purity of our movement. It begins with each small community and expands into an international society. The leaders of the international society's effect will only really be accessible to the devotees when that spirit is applied on the local level in communities. We have responsibility for each other. So often, Srila Prabhupada is cited that you will show your love for me by how you cooperate. And he didn't just speak this one instruction toward the end of his pastimes in this world, but he emphasized it throughout his his life, throughout the way he taught his leaders, in his letters, in his personal instructions, and in his books. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's the postgraduate study of Srimad Bhagavatam. Chaitanya Charitamrita is the teachings of Lord Chaitanya through his words and his life. Srila Prabhupada's mission was to take the teachings of Lord Chaitanya throughout the world in the English language. The teachings of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is very much about the loving relationships among devotees. Devotees of every possible variety. It's about the mercy of Lord Nityananda, even upon the most fallen souls, to give them the opportunity to chant the holy names and be happy. Excuse me, Yes, Srila Prabhupada, as the founder Acharya of our movement, his life and his example is the gateway into the loving service of the Panchatattva and Shri Shri Radha Gopinath. To make this the priority of our life. To take the responsibility. I've said it many times, and I pray I can say it to my dying breath, that our movement, its health and its expansion is so much dependent on how we really create loving, caring community among Vaishnavas, centered around living purely, chanting the holy names, and hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord, worshiping the deity, and making every possible sacrifice, taking all kinds of risks, and extending ourselves to spread this movement philosophically, culturally, in the line of Srila Prabhupada's mercy. Today is Srila Prabhupada's 125th Vyas Puja. Lord Sri Krishna, his pastimes in this world were 125 years. So it is a very sweet meditation that the same span of time that Lord Sri Krishna lived, he took birth in Gokul, Mahaban, Mathura. Then he went to Mathura and Dwarka. He spoke Bhagavad Gita in Kurukshetra. That same amount of time is from 1896, Srila Prabhupada's birthday, to today, his Vyas Puja. The greatest worship we can offer to Radha Gopinath or whatever our deities may be, wherever we are, is in pleasing Srila Prabhupada. The greatest way to please Srila Prabhupada is to follow in his footsteps by taking our vows seriously and treating each other in the footsteps of the love and the care that he had for each of us. That analogy of shedding buckets of blood for every devotee, when I first heard that, I practically fainted. Srila Prabhupada meant it. Buckets of blood. Within the physical body, blood is our life. The depth of the meaning of Srila Prabhupada saying this. He meant it and he felt it. Was to really give us the urgency of how we should take responsibility for each other. That is inseparable from how we can assist Srila Prabhupada in his mission. And that is so much how we can please him. When we glorify Srila Prabhupada by describing his wonderful philosophy and his wonderful pastimes, we do need to very carefully imbibe within our heart the truth that to show our gratitude, to show our love, we need to really strive to be the servant of his servants. And in this spirit, to chant the holy names of Radharani and Krishna, and together to spread the chanting of the holy names. I thank each and every one of you. It is Srila Prabhupada's most benevolent mercy upon me that I'm given the very sacred blessing to have your association. And according to my small capacity, to guide you and to serve you. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.